She sheltered 2 lost wolf pups in the forest. Next day, the alpha king chose her. The wind rustled the high branches, carrying the scent of wet earth and pine, and somewhere deep in the shadows, a bird called, its song trembling like a secret. Ilara's footsteps were soft on the moss, careful not to disturb the life that thrived unseen. She had been walking for hours, seeking herbs for her mother who was ill. Her basket swung from her arm, full of roots and leaves that smelled bitter and sweet all at once. The sun was beginning to fall behind the trees, spilling golden streaks that danced across the forest floor. And then she heard a sound that stopped her completely, a whimper. Quiet, almost hidden beneath the sighing wind, but unmistakable. Ilara froze, her heart beat faster. She followed the sound carefully, stepping over roots and fallen leaves, until she reached a small hollow where the underbrush had parted. There, huddled together, were 2 tiny wolf pups. Their fur was matted, their eyes wide and fearful. They were shaking, trembling in a way that made Ilara's chest ache. "Oh, you poor things," she whispered, kneeling slowly. She did not move too quickly, afraid to scare them. "Are you lost?" The pups did not answer, only looked at her with silent, trusting eyes. They had no mother nearby. The thought made Ilara shiver. In the village, people said wolves were dangerous, that they could smell fear and strike without warning. But something in these pups, something small and fragile and innocent, made her forget all caution. She reached into her basket and carefully placed some soft cloth beneath them. "You can stay here for tonight. I'll find a better place for you soon." The pups hesitated, but then crawled into the warmth of the cloth. Ilara smiled softly, brushing her hair from her face. She did not know where their mother was or if they even had one left, but she knew one thing clearly: she could not leave them alone in the forest at night. Night fell fast. Shadows stretched and twisted as the moon rose, pale and silver. The forest became alive in a different way. The rustling leaves sounded louder, the distant howls of wolves carried like a warning, and every snapping twig made Ilara startle. Yet she did not move. She stayed with the pups, her hand resting gently on their soft fur. And then she felt it, eyes watching her, a presence, immense and powerful, pressing down on her like the weight of the forest itself. She looked up, and in the clearing beyond the shadows a wolf stood, not small like the pups, but large, larger than any she had ever seen. Its fur was silver-black, and its eyes were golden, bright as fire. The air around it seemed to hum with energy, a silent command that made her heart thump in her chest. The wolf stepped forward, not threatening, not attacking, but every movement carried authority. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. She had heard stories of the alpha wolves of the northern forest, creatures so powerful that villages trembled at their presence. And yet, here one stood, not in anger but in silent judgment. The pups growled softly, huddling closer to her. The big wolf's eyes softened just slightly at the sight. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished into the trees. Ilara's knees shook and she sank to the ground, clutching the pups to her chest. What is happening?" she whispered. The forest was quiet again, but the sense of being watched lingered. Ilara tried to calm herself, telling herself it was only fear, only imagination. Yet deep inside, a strange excitement stirred. Something was coming, something important, and she could feel it in the air, in the rustling leaves, in the cold brush of the wind against her face. She stayed there through the night, listening. The pups slept, their small bodies rising and falling in her arms, and the forest seemed to settle around her. For the first time, she felt a connection to the woods, not fear but a strange, fragile trust. Morning light broke through the branches like liquid gold. Ilara stretched and sighed, feeling both tired and restless. She had to return home soon, but the pups could not be left alone. She carried them carefully in her basket, weaving through the trees. And then she saw it again, the same wolf. It was closer this time, standing on a large stone, looking at her with eyes that seemed to pierce through her soul. Ilara froze. You're the alpha," she breathed, her voice trembling. She did not know why she said it aloud, as if naming it could make the truth real. The wolf did not respond. It only watched, its head tilting slightly, curious, almost approving. And then, with a single fluid motion, it turned and walked away, disappearing into the forest as if it had never been there. Alara's mind raced. Who was this creature? Why did it watch her? Why did she feel drawn to it? She carried the pups to a safe hollow near a stream and left them there with fresh water. As she stood, ready to leave, she felt a small, hard object at her feet. She looked down. A single silver claw, delicate yet strong, lay shining on the earth. Her breath caught. The Alpha had left it. A claim, a warning, or something else. Alara picked it up, turning it over in her hands. It was cold, yet it seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. She could not understand it, but her heart knew one thing. She was no longer alone in the forest. Something had chosen her. The wind whispered again through the trees, and somewhere in the distance, the forest seemed to sigh. Alara wrapped the claw carefully in her scarf and held it close to her chest. She looked at the pups, sleeping peacefully, and felt a strange courage swell within her. The world had changed overnight. Something powerful, something magical had noticed her. And though fear fluttered in her chest like a trapped bird, she also felt a spark of hope. For the first time, she understood that the forest was not just a place of danger. It was a place of secrets, of hidden magic, and perhaps of destiny. She looked back toward the trees where the Alpha had disappeared. The forest remained silent, but her heart throbbed with the promise of what was to come. And Alara knew, without doubt, that her life would never be the same again. The village lay quiet in the early morning, mist curling between the thatched roofs like soft fingers. Alara walked carefully along the narrow path toward her small home, the silver claw wrapped in her scarf, pressed against her chest. Her mind refused to rest. The memory of the Alpha's golden eyes haunted her even more than the night in the forest. The pups were safe near the stream, sleeping quietly under the gentle sun. Yet a part of her worried. She could not shake the feeling that something or someone had marked her, like a shadow clinging to her every movement. A sudden sound made her stop. Hooves. Heavy, deliberate, and unlike any cart or farmer's animal she had heard. The villagers peeked nervously from their doors and windows. Rumors had always traveled fast. Stories of the Alpha King and his fearsome wolves, guardians of the northern forest, had long been whispered at hearths and in hushed corners. Alara's heart thumped painfully in her chest as a figure emerged through the mist. Tall, cloaked in black that seemed to swallow the morning light, the man stepped from the forest with a presence so commanding that even the bravest villagers faltered. Behind him, a pair of enormous wolves walked silently, their eyes gleaming like polished amber in the fog. The villagers fell silent. Children hid behind skirts and old men muttered prayers under their breath. Alara's breath caught. She recognized him immediately, the Alpha King. Not just the wolf from the forest, but the man who carried the weight of his pack and the curse of his power. The golden eyes, the rigid posture, the aura of danger. He was the same, yet different. A man and a wolf intertwined in a way that made her heart ache and her mind spin. Where is she? His voice was calm, deep, and measured, yet it carried an authority that froze everyone in place. The villagers glanced nervously at one another, unsure who he meant, but a trembling voice finally spoke. She is Alara," a young girl said softly, pointing toward the edge of the path. Alara's legs refused to move at first. The Alpha's gaze landed on her, unblinking, piercing, reading her as if she were a book with pages still wet from the ink. She felt exposed, small, yet strangely unafraid. He stepped closer, each movement deliberate. The wolves beside him mirrored his power, standing still and perfect, guardians of a realm that seemed almost unreal. "Alara," he said, and the sound of her name left her lips trembling. "You have been marked. By what or whom I do not yet know, but the forest has chosen you, and so have I," the villagers gasped. Whispers rose like wind through dry leaves. "The Alpha chooses a human, Impossible. Alara could not look away. Something in the way he spoke, the way he held himself, told her this was not a threat. It was a truth that she could not refuse. I don't understand, she said, voice shaking. Why me? He paused, his golden eyes softening just slightly. Because you acted with courage when others would have fled. You sheltered the lost, and in doing so, you showed a heart strong enough to stand beside what the forest protects. Alara felt her chest tighten. His words were heavy with meaning, and she realized she had no choice but to follow him. She glanced at the villagers, but none dared speak. The decision was not theirs. The Alpha King gestured, and the wolves moved forward silently. Alara took a step, her basket still in her hands, the silver claw hidden beneath her scarf. She felt a strange pull toward him, something she could neither name nor resist. They left the village in silence, walking into the misty forest where sunlight struggled through the dense canopy. Every sound seemed amplified, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the distant cry of a bird, the whisper of the wind. Alara's mind was a storm of questions, yet a strange calm settled in her chest. "Why are you taking me?" she asked finally, breaking the quiet. "To my home," he replied simply. "You belong there now, and soon you will understand why." She glanced at him, and the golden eyes that had haunted her dreams now held a softness that made her breath hitch. There was a loneliness in him, buried beneath the power and authority, that called to something deep inside her. She felt an urge to comfort him, though she did not know why. The journey through the forest was long. Streams and small hills passed beneath their feet, and the wolves walked silently beside them, eyes ever watchful. Alara noticed how the Alpha observed her, not as one watches a stranger, but as one studies a fragile, precious flame that could either warm or burn. Hours passed, and the forest darkened as the sun dipped behind the mountains. They came to a clearing where the trees parted to reveal a castle carved into the cliffside. It was magnificent, yet intimidating. Shadows clung to its towers and arches like silk, and the stones seemed alive with the magic of the forest. "This is where you will stay," he said. His gaze held hers, and in that moment she felt both awe and fear. The castle was not a home, it was a kingdom, and he was its guardian. Alara stepped forward, her fingers brushing the stone walls. A shiver ran down her spine. She could sense the magic that hummed through the air, like a silent song that promised danger, mystery, and something else, something she could not yet name. The Alpha King watched her silently. "You will have a place here," he said, his voice almost gentle. "But you must follow the rules of this forest and this castle. There are things here that can harm you if you do not respect them." Alara nodded, swallowing hard. I will follow. I promise." For a moment, a flicker of something softer crossed his expression. She could not name it. Was it approval, gratitude, or something else entirely? She felt her heart catch in her chest. They walked inside the castle, and the interior was more magnificent than she could have imagined. High ceilings stretched into shadowed corners, walls carved with symbols that seemed to shimmer faintly. The air smelled faintly of pine and stone, a mixture both calming and strange. The pups would be safe here, she realized, though she still worried about them. That evening they dined in silence. The Alpha King's presence filled the room, commanding attention without needing words. Alara felt a strange pull toward him, drawn by the quiet intensity of his gaze and the way he seemed both distant and near, untouchable and yet impossibly close. "You sheltered the lost," he said finally, breaking the silence. "Few humans show such care without thought of reward. That is why I have chosen you." Alara lowered her gaze. "I did what felt right. I didn't think it would lead to this." He leaned slightly forward, and for a moment the mask of authority faltered. His eyes softened, revealing a vulnerability that made her heart ache. "This world is cruel, but you have shown something rare: compassion, courage, strength." Alara felt warmth spread through her chest. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, to understand everything about him, the forest, the wolves. yet no words seemed sufficient. As the evening deepened into night, the castle grew quiet. The wolves settled near the hearth, their amber eyes glowing softly in the dim light. The Alpha King stood near the window, gazing at the forest beyond. Alara approached him carefully. "Will you tell me about yourself?" she asked softly. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned, his golden eyes meeting hers, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. "One day," he said finally, "you will know all that must be known, but not yet. For now, you must learn to survive here, and to trust." Alara nodded, understanding the weight behind his words. There was power here, darkness and light intertwined, and she was now part of it. Fear and fascination danced together in her chest. The night stretched on, quiet and deep. Alara curled up near the hearth, listening to the soft breathing of the wolves and the distant rumble of the forest beyond. She thought of the pups, of the silver claw, and of the Alpha King who had chosen her. And though sleep eventually claimed her, her dreams were filled with golden eyes, silver shadows, and the whisper of a promise that the forest had made long before she was born. Alara's life had changed forever. The Alpha King had claimed her, not with force but with recognition of something in her that even she had not yet understood. Something strong, something enduring. And in the quiet of that first night within his castle, she knew that her journey had only just begun. The castle was alive in ways Alara had not imagined. It was not merely stone and wood, it was breathing. The walls seemed to hum faintly, as if holding a memory of every footstep, every whispered word, every shadow that had passed through its halls. Candles flickered without wind, casting dancing shapes that seemed almost alive. The air smelled of pine, rain, and something sweet she could not name, something ancient. Alara wandered through the halls cautiously. She had been here for several days now, yet every corner held a quiet wonder, a subtle warning. The Alpha King moved through the castle with ease, as if he were part of it. His presence filled every room he entered. Even when he was silent, the very air around him seemed heavier, charged with something powerful she could not yet understand. The pups, now stronger and more playful, padded quietly after her, tails wagging. She smiled softly at them, brushing their soft fur. The Alpha King had allowed them to stay, though he often watched from a distance, his golden eyes wary and protective. One evening, as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows across the stone floors, Alara found herself alone in the library. Shelves stretched to the ceiling, filled with ancient tomes, their pages yellowed and fragrant with age. She ran her fingers along the spines, feeling the power of knowledge contained within. She did not understand most of it, yet something called to her, a whisper in her mind, a sense of connection she could not explain. A soft sound behind her made her turn. The Alpha King was standing in the doorway, his form framed by the fading light. He did not speak immediately. He simply watched, his golden eyes unreadable, and Alara felt that familiar pull in her chest, fear, awe, and something far deeper. "You read too much," he said at last, his voice calm, almost teasing though his tone carried weight. "Knowledge without understanding can be dangerous." Alara's lips curved into a small smile. "And yet, understanding comes from knowledge. I want to understand this place and you." The Alpha's gaze lingered on her, and for a long moment neither spoke. Then he stepped into the library, silent as a shadow, and closed the distance between them. "You are brave," he said quietly. "Brave enough to come here, brave enough to stay despite the unknown." Alara felt her heart flutter. I don't feel brave," she admitted softly. "I feel frightened most of the time, but I want to learn. I want to belong here somehow." The Alpha King's eyes softened. A vulnerability almost hidden beneath his strength shimmered in the golden light. "Belonging is not given, Alara. It is earned through courage, loyalty, and understanding. You have shown courage already. The rest will follow if you are willing." Alara nodded. She did not understand everything he meant, but she trusted him in ways she had never trusted anyone. Days passed. and life in the castle grew more familiar yet more mysterious. Alara learned to navigate its halls, to respect the boundaries the Alpha King had set, and to care for the pups, who were growing faster than normal wolves. They were clever, perceptive, almost human in their understanding. Watching them brought a sense of peace she had not known before, even as the presence of the Alpha King kept her heart in constant tension. One evening, a disturbance rippled through the castle. A rival pack from the northern woods had entered the territory, their howls echoing in the distance. The Alpha King's form shifted, a subtle tension in his posture, and Alara noticed the quiet command in his eyes. "You must stay inside," he said, his voice sharp now though controlled. "Do not leave these halls." Alara hesitated. I can help." "You cannot," he interrupted gently but firmly. "This is not your fight. But you must understand, if you ever face this, you must trust your strength, trust your heart. That is all I can teach you for now." The Alpha King moved through the halls with a precision that left Alara awestruck. She followed him at a distance, noting the way his every step, every glance, every motion commanded respect and attention. The wolves flanked him silently, guardians in shadows. That night, as the castle grew quiet, Alara sat by the window looking out at the forest. The moon rose pale and luminous, casting silver light across the trees. She thought of the pups, of the silver claw, of the Alpha King who had claimed her with a quiet power that both frightened and fascinated her. "Why did you choose me?" she whispered to herself, though she knew he could hear. From the shadows, a soft voice answered, "Because you see beyond fear, you see what others cannot." Alara turned sharply. He was there just behind her, his golden eyes glinting in the moonlight. The air around him seemed warmer yet heavier, charged with his presence. "I do not understand," she said honestly. "Why me? Why not someone stronger, braver, wiser?" He moved closer, standing just a step away. "Strength is not only in muscle or skill," he said softly. "It is in heart, in spirit. You have that, Alara, and you have courage. That is why you were chosen." Her breath caught. The honesty in his voice, the vulnerability behind his power made her chest ache. She felt drawn to him, yet something held her back. The fear of the unknown, the awareness of the distance between them, and the unspoken rules of this strange, magical place. Days turned into nights, and Alara found herself learning more about the castle, the forest, and the Alpha King. She discovered that he was bound by a curse, a need to protect his pack in the forest, yet forbidden from fully joining the human world. He had loved once long ago but had lost everything, and in his grief he had chosen solitude. Yet she saw glimpses of the man beneath the power and the curse, a man capable of care, laughter, and even gentleness. One evening, as she tended to the pups, she felt his gaze on her. He had entered silently and she had not noticed. "You are growing stronger," he observed, his voice quiet, almost thoughtful. "And yet your heart remains gentle. That balance is rare." Alara looked up. "I do not know if I am strong," she said softly. "I only know I want to protect what I care about." He stepped closer, and for a moment the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. "That is enough," he said, almost whispering. "More than enough." Her cheeks warmed. She looked away, unsure what to do with the feelings that swirled within her: fear, admiration, longing, and something unnameable. As the moon climbed higher, the Alpha King spoke again, his voice softer now. "You will face challenges here, Alara. Not all of them are physical. Some will test your heart, your trust, your courage. You must be ready." Alara nodded. "I will try, I promise." He studied her for a long moment and then he stepped back, returning to the shadows near the doorway. "Good," he said. "Rest now. Tomorrow the lessons continue." The night stretched long and quiet. Alara curled up near the hearth, the pups sleeping at her feet. She thought of the forest, of the silver claw, and of the Alpha King whose presence had changed her world in ways she could not yet understand. Sleep came slowly, filled with dreams of golden eyes, silver shadows, and distant howls. In her dreams, the Alpha King was both fearsome and tender, a creature of power and vulnerability, drawing her into a world she had never imagined. When she awoke, the sun had just begun to rise. Light spilled across the castle halls, illuminating the carvings and ancient symbols that adorned the walls. The forest outside shimmered with dew, alive and mysterious. Elara felt a sense of purpose stirring within her. She was no longer merely a girl from the village. She was part of something larger, something powerful, magical, and dangerous. And she knew that her connection with the Alpha King was only beginning to deepen. She glanced toward the shadows at the far end of the hall where he often stood, silent and watchful. A shiver ran through her, not of fear but of anticipation. Something unspoken hung between them, delicate yet strong, a thread of trust and longing that neither could deny. The forest awaited. The castle held its secrets. And the Alpha King, he waited, watching, teaching, and slowly revealing the man beneath the legend, the beast beneath the human form, and the possibility of a bond neither had dared to imagine. Elara took a deep breath, feeling the strength of the forest and the castle around her. She had survived the journey, the nights, and the fear. She had faced the unknown, and she would face more. Because she was learning that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the decision to step forward despite it. And the Alpha King, he would see that courage, recognize it, and perhaps in time, allow himself to be touched by it as well. The first light of dawn crept slowly through the tall, narrow windows of the castle. Silver dust of morning danced on the stone floors, and the forest outside glimmered as though it were awake, watching. Elara stood near the window, her fingers resting lightly on the sill, her gaze fixed on the misty trees below. The pups slept at her feet, their soft breath steady and warm. Yet her mind was restless. Something heavy, urgent, pressed against the edges of her thoughts. The Alpha King had been silent since the previous night. He moved through the halls with his usual precision, yet today there was a tension to his movements, a quiet storm behind his golden eyes. Elara sensed it before she saw it. She could feel the pull of the forest, the energy of the castle, and the deep, unspoken weight of destiny that hovered around them both. "Elara," his voice came suddenly, low and commanding, yet not harsh. "Come with me." She followed him through the halls, her footsteps light, her heart pounding. They walked in silence, the sound of the pups' paws behind them and the soft wind drifting through open windows the only noises. Outside, the forest had begun to stir. The leaves whispered as if they were speaking, the branches shifted in the morning breeze, and a faint silver mist clung to the roots and stones. They reached the edge of a cliff that overlooked the northern woods. The wind blew cold and fresh, carrying the scent of pine, earth, and something ancient she could not name. The Alpha King stood at the edge, his form tall and imposing, yet there was a quiet weariness in the line of his shoulders. "Elara," he said finally, his golden eyes meeting hers, "today you will see why you were chosen. Today, you may choose whether to stand with me or turn away." Her breath caught. She had feared this moment, had wondered if it would ever come, but now that it had, she felt both anticipation and uncertainty swirl in her chest. "Why me?" she asked softly. "Why do I matter so much to you, to the forest?" He turned slightly, allowing her to see the shadow of the wolf beneath his human form, the subtle shift that marked the curse he carried. "Because you saw the lost," he said, his voice quiet, almost reverent. "Because you cared for them without thought of reward. And because your heart is strong enough to face what I cannot face alone." Elara felt the weight of his words settle over her. She thought of the pups she had sheltered, of the silver claw he had left her, of the nights of fear and wonder in the castle. And she understood this was no ordinary bond. This was a test, not only of courage but of heart. A sudden movement caught her eye. From the shadows of the forest, figures approached, wolves, larger and darker than she had ever seen, eyes gleaming with hostility. They were a rival pack, testing the Alpha King's strength, seeking to challenge him to take what he protected. The Alpha King stepped forward, his stance unwavering, yet his gaze returned to her. "Stay behind me," he said. "Do not fear." "But no, you have a part in this if you choose it." Alara's chest tightened. Fear surged, but she felt something stronger, a resolve that had been growing within her since the forest, since the pups, since the first moment he had claimed her. She nodded, gripping the silver claw in her hand, feeling its pulse against her palm as if it were alive. The rival wolves advanced, their movements swift, elegant, and deadly. The Alpha King's form shimmered, a blend of man and beast, power and control intertwined. Alara watched, her heart pounding, as he moved with precision, defending the edge of the forest with strength and strategy. Yet even in this moment of danger, he did not lose the soft, golden gaze he reserved for her. One of the wolves leapt forward, eyes fixed on her, teeth bared. Instinctively, Alara stepped forward, holding the silver claw high. A sudden warmth spread through her, a connection to the forest and to the Alpha King. The wolf hesitated, then retreated, bowing subtly before the power that pulsed through her hands. The other wolves paused as well. Alara realized then what the forest had shown her all along. She was not merely a human girl. She carried a gift, a bond with the Alpha King and the forest, a spark of strength that could rival the beasts themselves. The rival pack vanished into the shadows, and silence fell once more. The Alpha King lowered himself to his human form, the golden glow of his eyes softening as he approached her. "You did that," he whispered, awe and something unspoken in his voice. You are stronger than you know, stronger than me in ways I cannot measure." Alara looked up at him, breathless. I only did what felt right. I wanted to protect everything I care about." He studied her, his gaze intense and unwavering. Then he reached out, gently placing his hand over hers, the silver claw between their palms. "And that is why you were chosen, because courage and heart together can break curses that no power alone can overcome." Alara felt warmth spread through her chest, a quiet certainty settling into her soul. She understood now. The forest, the pups, the castle, the Alpha King, they were all part of a destiny she had been given, and the choice was hers. "I will stand with you," she said firmly. "Not because I am unafraid, but because I care, because I trust you, because I trust us." The Alpha King's golden eyes softened completely. For the first time, the weight of his centuries of duty, loneliness, and fear seemed to lift slightly. He bowed his head, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they had forged, a promise that he would no longer face the world alone. Together they walked back to the castle, side by side, the silver claw resting between them. The forest seemed to hum in approval, the mist curling around them like a protective embrace. The pups ran ahead, playful and joyful, a symbol of the new life and hope that Alara had brought. Days passed after that moment, and the bond between Alara and the Alpha King grew stronger. She learned more of the castle's secrets, the magic of the forest, and the depth of the Alpha King's curse. Yet she also discovered his humanity, the man beneath the power and the legend. He laughed quietly at her questions, guided her gently through the forest, and allowed her to see the softness he rarely revealed. One evening, as they stood together on the castle's highest tower, watching the sun sink behind the northern mountains, Alara spoke softly. "Do you think we can truly change things, break the curse completely?" The Alpha King's golden eyes held hers, steady and calm. "Yes," he said finally, "because you have shown me that strength is not only power or control, it is trust, courage, and love. You have given me hope, and that is stronger than any curse." Alara's heart swelled. She reached for his hand, and he took it without hesitation. Their fingers intertwined, a connection deeper than words, uniting not only their hearts but the magic of the forest and the castle. That night the castle seemed to celebrate in its own quiet way. Shadows danced along the walls, the wind hummed through the towers, and the forest beyond whispered secrets of approval. Alara slept peacefully, the pups curled around her, and the Alpha King watched over them, a silent guardian yet finally at peace. When dawn came, it brought with it a new world. The curse that had shadowed the Alpha King's life was lifted, not completely, for the forest and its magic remained alive and wild, but the weight of solitude and fear had vanished. He was no longer alone, and he was no longer bound by his past mistakes. Elara awoke to the warmth of the sun and the soft nudges of the pups. She smiled, feeling a quiet pride, a sense of belonging that she had never known. And when she looked toward the Alpha King, standing tall in the morning light, she knew that their journey together was only beginning. The forest stretched beyond the castle, alive and eternal, a witness to their bond. And in that vast, mysterious world, Alara understood one thing clearly. Courage, trust, and love were the true powers that shaped destiny. And as she stepped forward into that new day, side by side with the Alpha King, she felt the pulse of the forest, the warmth of the pups, and the promise of a future filled with hope, adventure, and the magic of a love that had changed everything. Alara had chosen. The Alpha King had chosen. And together they would face whatever the world and the forest had yet to show them.